Good evening. Hello. I hope you had a good week. We had an exciting week, a chaotic week filled with the preparations for and celebration of a toddler's birthday, which is always a very exciting thing to do. Um, a reminder of things that when you were a child delighted you, and then when you're an adult, you think you're too grown up for it. But there is still something I don't think I will ever quite get past the joy of now being allowed to have my very own helium cylinder and fill a balloon. So it's been a fun week. A strange contrast, really. It's a week that every year is a week of celebration and joy for us as a family, and obviously it's also the week in which Holocaust Memorial Day falls. This last Friday was Holocaust Memorial Day, and every year I try to do something just to take a few moments and just reread the Stockholm Declaration. Not because it's the only way to do it, but because it's a good anchor point as the nations of the world come together and declare this thing is so abhorrent, so appalling. The genocide is so just so much the very most base and destructive of human horrors and evils. There's agreement. Nobody looks at it and says, "Oh no, that was a good thing," or murder is a good thing, or state-sponsored brutality is a good thing. And you read this very articulate document, and then you begin to think of all the times since that declaration was made where genocide has continued. Knowing what took place in the Holocaust, knowing the murder, the systematic industrialized slaughter of millions of people, of 6 million Jews, of millions of uh, ethnic people from the Romani, the Gypsy, the Slav community, of LGBTQ plus people, of people that were disabled, of anybody who didn't really fit, but the systematic, you don't fit, you don't belong, you have no place here. Knowing that it still today echoes in its impact on families and societies. Still, human beings continue to find themselves drawn into conflict. And when you read the stories, and if you've never done it, I would recommend it. If you read the stories of the ordinary people and how they suffered appalling horrors, you have to acknowledge that it was ordinary humans who committed them. Ordinary people who were drawn into a place of fear or hatred. I can't look at the guards of those camps and say that they were any different from me and my neighbors. Lied to? Yes, probably. Terrified? Yes, probably. Angry, full of prejudice? It's human nature. You know, we hear it in our news today. Our politicians talk about the need to restrict people coming to our country because there's not enough space. That's the same threat that was dangled by Hitler, Lebensraum, they called it. We, the Germans, we need more space. We don't have enough space. And so as I was reading it, I was reminded that but for the grace of God, any one of us could find ourselves acting like a monster. And then I remembered mercy. Then I remembered the mercy of God and the mercy that He calls us to. It's the simplest and most profound promise that Jesus gives. It occurs in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount, and He says this: "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy." Not blessed are those who haven't been drawn in yet. Blessed are those whose lives and circumstances haven't put them under that sort of duress. Not blessed are those whose politicians haven't tricked them, but no, blessed are those who are merciful. You know, there's a lot of talk about what it is to be a Christian. At its heart, whatever you describe the life of a Christian as being, it begins as we enter the kingdom of God with an acknowledgement that we need mercy. I don't have to talk about you or anybody else tonight. One of the reasons that I am so grateful to God is because I know I needed a Savior. I needed mercy. And people who know my story know that I became a Christian when I was very, very young. I was just 6 years old. And they say, well, why did you need mercy at 6? It used to bother me sometimes because I grew up in a tradition where people used to tell their stories of coming to a relationship with Jesus, and they talk about all the terrible things going on in their lives. And I was 6. I hadn't done any awful things. But mercy is not about, well, if you've done something terrible, then you need mercy. See, I need mercy not only because there are things I've done wrong, the Bible's clear about it, and I again, I can talk about my own experience. I'm not perfect, I never have been. Without God, I stand no chance of improvement. But the reality is this: mercy is also about changing my outcomes. It's about changing my future. It's about changing my possibilities. I needed mercy to change what the world would do to me. A pastor called Tom Sturbans, who has over the years, many times God has used him when he's preaching to really be a blessing to us, as a definition of mercy. He says that mercy is God's no. Mercy is God saying no to the identity that sin and death and the world would place upon you. You know, we live at a time of economic pressure. We live at a time when our politics is polarized. We live at a time where we're seeing an almost constant stream of horror and human failure and reasons to be fearful or angry or to condemn people being fed into our homes and minds. Mercy says you don't have to be what the world says you are. Mercy says, I'll step in and put a guardrail around your life. I will give you peace in the storm. I will prevent you from conforming. A few years back, I was asked to do a session for tutor groups at our local college. And I was given a pretty open canvas. And so here I am, a middle-aged, white, 1%er male. And so I started the whole session with just a mugshot of me on the screen with the words, I am the problem. Now, it wasn't because I think that I have done some of the things which my peers are necessarily guilty of. And when society talks about the problems of patriarchy and toxic male behavior and all of those things, I may not recognize all of those things in what I have done, but I tell you this, I need mercy so that I don't conform to that identity. I need mercy so that I don't react when people try and right the wrongs of a society and the people that they're opposing look like me. I need mercy. And I need to be merciful. I need to be merciful. You see, but for God's grace, I'm no different to anybody else. I'm no different to the people that our society, others. It says, oh, well, they must be monsters. They must be worse. There's something about them. But we're just hiding then. There's no one who ever lived who needed mercy more than me. And there's no one who ever will live. Mercy is not available. And so when I say that I'm a Christian, it's because to enter the kingdom of God, I said, I need your mercy, God. And God said, well, here it is, but you be merciful too. You see, by declaring that I'm part of the kingdom of God, and if you call yourself a Christian, that's what you're doing. What I'm saying is, I don't belong to this place anymore. I have a new kingdom. I have a new home. I have a new identity, and my identity is in who Jesus is. My identity is, well, he's the king. So if you want to know who I am, look at the one that I serve. If you want to know who I am, look at the one who rescued me. If you want to know who I am, look at the one whose authority I claim. That's what it means to be a Christian. Earth is not my home. So I have to behave differently than I would if Earth was my home. I can't be trying to make my own way. I can't be trying to force my own agenda. I can't be trying to fight my own corner. I can't be scrabbling for my rights. But I should be standing up for those that can't, and I should be caring for those that society rejects, and I should be loving those whose identity has caused people to alienate them. And I should be saying that there is no barrier, not of any kind, in the life of another person that I should not be willing to personally make sacrifices to cross. You see, the mercy of God finds its fullest expression in the fact that Jesus gives himself for us. That's what the story of the gospel is all about. It's about God who had no need of anything, God who could have simply started again with another creation. God seeing how we were, not just seeing us on our bright, shiny days, not just seeing our best and most noble intentions, God seeing the very worst of us. God seeing our inability to separate ourselves from horror and violence and tribalism and guilt and fear and anger and death, steps in and says, I will give all that I am, so that instead of them facing the consequences, I will provide life for them. A life that overcomes, a life that is a life of grace and peace and mercy. Tonight, I don't know where you're at in your faith. I don't know whether it's a very quiet thing that you don't tell anybody about, or you're all bumper stickers, t-shirts, and fancy hats. Whichever the sort of expression of faith you have and however you express it in the world, well, that's your business, and I pray that God blesses you in it. But if in any way, shape, or form you claim to belong to Jesus, and you take that word Christian, and it really literally meant in its earliest use a little Christ, someone who was trying to be just like Jesus. It was an insult thrown at the early church by the people of their day, because no one could understand, why would you choose to follow somebody who died for his enemies? But that's what it is to be merciful. That's the standard. And you know, there's another reason why I need to obtain mercy. See, Jesus doesn't qualify the statement. He doesn't say, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy for themselves. It is true. It is absolutely true, they shall. But The reality is nobody is merciful enough to build up an account to get enough mercy for themselves. That is the mercy of God. But I also need to obtain mercy for others. You know, there are times when you might look at the situation and say, I don't even know how to help. I don't know how to change this situation. I don't know what I could possibly bring to that person's life so that they can know the reality of mercy, so they really can be set free from the consequences of their own actions and what society has done and all of the things which cause people to be or feel condemned. Maybe it's a situation in which you say, I don't even know how to tell that person that I don't condemn them without feeling like I'm condemning them or trapping them or snaring them. I don't have the words and I don't want to cause hurt. So what can I do? I believe that when our desire is to show mercy, God grants us that there is a merciful outcome. I don't believe that any person ever sets out to show kindness or grace, to act inclusively, to step in, to resist the consequences that someone is facing, and God isn't ready and willing and available to help them achieve an outcome that maybe on their own they can't. When you say you're in the kingdom of God, you have the resources of the kingdom, and the resources of the kingdom are the same resources that Jesus uses when he touches lepers and heals them, when he feeds hungry folk in a crowd out of a packed lunch. They're the same resources that he uses when he speaks peace and welcome to those who previously had been excluded from the temple because they didn't have the money, or they were too young, or their faces didn't fit. You have access to the same resources that Jesus draws on when, whilst he endured intolerable agony, he looked at those who were inflicting it on him and he said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. You know, the world doesn't need me to fight. The world certainly doesn't need me to pass judgment. When I was reading the Stockholm Declaration and listening to just some of the stories that are available that you can look at and read or watch videos of that are just talking about what people have endured, there's that sense of anger, that sense of injustice that wells up, and a sense of complete helplessness. But then you read the declaration, you realize that everybody who gives it any real thought sees the horror. The world doesn't need me to be another indignant person. It doesn't need me to be one more voice that articulates how bad it is. It needs me to show mercy. It needs me to commit all that I am to break the barriers down, to change the narrative, to refuse to accept the limitations of identity that society uses to divide us. And I say, you can't tell me that my resources are limited. You can't tell me that I somehow will lose my place, because my place is in the kingdom of God. My home is beyond the nations, the boundaries, the identities of this world. And when I'm merciful, I can draw on the resources of God himself, just like Jesus did. You might be thinking of people that you know that need mercy. It's pretty easy to think about it, really. All of us know folk that face exclusion or difficulties or persecution from society or their community. But really, whoever it is, mercy says, I want to do what is right for you, what is kind for you, what is good for you, what refuses to accept that you are what the world or sin or death say about you. And I believe that when you choose to show mercy, God will pour in your experience for you and for those around you his resources by the mercy of God. That's our thoughts for this week. Lord bless you. Have a good week. Don't forget, if you want to get in touch with us, you can contact us. There's the details below these videos. We always love to hear from you. We love to pray with folks. For our new subscribers, thank you so much. It's good to have you join us for these chats. I hope they're a blessing. And God willing, we'll see you next week. Good night.